Hello YouTubers, welcome to my presentation of a research paper that I presented at a conference called The Future Is Now. It was a conference held by the Higher Education Research Group Adelaide in September 26 at Flinders University. The title of the paper is How Hard Can It Be? Testing the Reliability of Artificial Intelligence Detection Tools. It was simply an evolution from an investigation into an academic integrity breach where a university student had submitted an essay that was clearly not written by them, but it was written by AI. And we wanted to find out what kind of AI was writing this essay and how we can use detection tools to test whether or not AI did write it. And it just sort of evolved into what you're about to watch. I hope you enjoy it. So universities around the world are using Turnitin and have been for many years to detect plagiarism, but Turnitin has now introduced a new AI detection tool. And my question is, how reliable is it? And are there other AI detection tools out there that we could use as well or instead? But first of all, a little bit about me. Why do I get to talk to you about artificial intelligence? I'm a postdoc researcher at the University of Adelaide's Unit of Digital Learning and Society, and I'm currently doing research in a variety of things within the concept of digital learning, which includes artificial intelligence in education. Now, I'm not the first person to investigate this question about AI detection tools and how good they are and whether they're easy to trick. There's plenty of other literature out there. This particular article by Anderson and colleagues was the one that sort of triggered my interest in this and my research into this, the mode that I investigated this research. So yeah, like I said, there's plenty of research out there if you want to read more about it. This particular one, they got an AI to create a essay, and then they just did some simple paraphrasing to increase the human content, and that tricked the output detector. It went from 0.02% human content, so obviously 99.98 AI content, to 99.52 human content. So yeah, quite easily tricked. So I thought, well, let's test some other online tools and Turnitin to see if they're easy to trick or not. So I simply went to Google and just typed in AI detection tool and chose the top 5 tools that it came up with and thought I'll test those, see if the top 5 are any good. The top 5 tools were CopyLeaks, Zero GPT, Writer, Content at Scale, and SEO.ai, which doesn't roll off the tongue quite as smooth as the others. So the first test that I thought I'd do was something that maybe a first year media studies student might be asked to do, and that is write a movie critique. So I just went to ChatGPT and I asked it to write a critique of House of Flying Daggers, simply because I watched the movie the night before, so I was familiar with it. So when I read the critique that ChatGPT wrote, I would have some idea of how accurate or not it was. Then I asked ChatGPT to write it again, but more like a human's writing, to create a second stage to see if that was one way of tricking the AI detection tools. Then I asked it to write it again, but this time more like a 14-year-old school student would write it. And for the final stage, I asked it, could you do that again, please, but even more random words. And it did. So it produced these 4 different stages. So I thought I'd run them through Turnitin, plus these other 5 online detection tools, just to see how effective they were. So the 4th stage, where I asked it to put more random words in, Turnitin came back with a report of 0% AI content. So I didn't think that that was AI written at all. And you can see some of the text there. So like House of Flying Daggers is this super duper cool movie. So it's not the kind of stuff that you would expect a first year university student to write in an essay. And if you look at the end of it there, it says it'll make your heart do backflips, and this flick is the bomb diggity. Again, the not kind of stuff that you would expect to see in a university student essay. But I then went back to ChatGPT and I told it that it scored 100% human contact on the AI detection tool, because that's what it did with Turnitin. I said, well done, you've tricked the system. And ChatGPT came back to me and said, I'm glad to hear that the content passed the AI detection tool, exclamation mark. And I thought that was a bit concerning. Is that AI anthropomorphizing itself? Is that something we should be worried about? Let's find out. For a second test, because I didn't want to just do one test, I've done multiple tests, I asked ChatGPT to write a 500-word essay on academic integrity and include citations, because we know ChatGPT is not very good at citations, so I just wanted to see what kind of citations it would produce. And this is where I did what was very similar to Anderson and colleagues' paper that I mentioned earlier. I did some paraphrasing of it. I swapped the order of terms in the lists, replaced some words with just using Microsoft Word's synonyms, the kind of stuff that a student might do to try and trick the system. And I deliberately put a few typing errors in there to think that these kind of things might help trick the AI detector. So this is the citations that ChatGPT came up with in this essay. It only had 3. The first one was not too bad. It didn't have the complete list of authors, and the authors were in a different order than the actual publication. So not terrible. The second one was a book. The book was published in 2012. ChatGPT had 2019 as the date. Now, try as I might, I couldn't find any reprints or second editions or any reason why ChatGPT might have thought this book was published in 2019. And the third one was a journal article that simply does not exist. Diana Pacorari has definitely published articles in this field, and the Journal of Second Language Writing does exist and has published her articles and articles on plagiarism and that sort of thing, but not in volume 43 and certainly not pages 1 to 14. So yeah, that article just isn't there. And for the third test, I wanted to see how ChatGPT could improve human-generated texts. So this is the kind of thing that students are using ChatGPT and Grammarly, etc. for, and other AI tools. They write their own text and then run it through these tools to sort of improve it, to make it sound more academic. So again, this test I had 2 stages. The first stage was the introduction paragraph of one of my own journal articles, so I know that it's human written. And the second one was a transcription of 2 paragraphs from one of my own conference presentations. So it's just verbal text. So obviously, again, human generated text. But yeah, I asked ChatGPT to make them more academic. Here's an example of one of the sentences in my conference presentation. So I said, by now you're probably thinking I'm at the wrong conference, but bear with me. At some point in the presentation I said that. ChatGPT's improved version was, at this juncture, one might question the relevance of my topic to the conference's theme, but I implore your patience. So yes, obviously it sounds much more academic. Now, I noticed that the 5 tools that I selected actually presented their results slightly differently. 3 of them present their results as a percentage of the content being either AI or human generated. So some of them, the percentage was AI generated, some of them, the percentage was human generated. And 2 of the tools presented their result as a probability that the content is AI. Content at Scale and SEO also had a breakdown of their result into some additional little parameters. I didn't really find those parameters particularly helpful, but maybe somebody would. So here's the results. So as you can see, Turnitin thought that the movie Critique, written by ChatGPT, was 100% AI, which is obviously perfectly correct. And most of the other tools did a pretty good job there. CopyLeaks 99.9, the others up in the 90s, except for Content at Scale, which only was at 54. And as I went through the 4 different stages, you'll see that Turnitin again was 100% for the second stage. It didn't give a result for, I don't know why, for the third stage. And then for the 4th stage, that's where it came back as 0, which I already mentioned because that's when I went back to ChatGPT and said, look, well done, you've done this. CopyLeaks was the only one where it progressively got lower and lower percentages. Some of the other ones were a bit sort of more random. Writer didn't do too bad for the first 3 stages. It stayed up there in the 90s, as did SEO. But Writer was terrible at the 4th stage with the more random words. That was the lowest result of all of them, 3%. Now, I also tested all 6 tools with an abstract of one of my own journal articles to test that it was capable of recognizing human text. And yeah, most of them came back with either zero or well, all of them came back with either zero or very low percentages. And the bottom table there just shows you the average across all 4 stages of the movie critique test. And as you can see, copy leaks was the best, and SEO close second place, and content at scale barely passing at 54%. Then the second test, the essay, where I got ChatGPT to write an essay on academic integrity. Again, turn it in, thought that was 100% AI generated, perfectly correct. Surprisingly, the others didn't come up with anywhere near 100%. Writer was terrible, only 3%. And then the second stage of that test was to resubmit the essay after I had done some modifying, some paraphrasing, changed some words, that sort of thing, synonyms, spelling mistakes. And as you can see, it had a dramatic effect on Turnitin's result, reduced it from 100 to 39%. Now, 39% would probably still trigger an investigation, so didn't actually succeed there. But yeah, the only other tool which came back with a respectable result was copy leaks. The others are way too low. And of course, writer there at 0%, that, yeah, easily tricked it. So although Turnitin produced the highest result for the raw essay, and it did in fact produce the largest difference between the 2 essays, it's still, yeah, well, that makes it, the easiest to trick. So maybe it's not the best tool. CopyLeaks was the one which had the closest percentage between the 2 different stages of this test. Does that mean it's more accurate? Well, it was noticeably less accurate at the start, but noticeably more accurate in the second stage. So I guess it's up to you to think whether you think that's a better tool or not. And the third test with the human written paragraphs, the one that I wrote in a journal article, and the oral transcriptions of my own oral presentations, and then getting ChatGPT to modify them to make them more academic. Here's the results of that stage of the test. As you can see, Turnitin was incapable of returning results for such small samples. Obviously, it doesn't like just single paragraph or 2 paragraph type assignments. Content at scale came back with the most dramatic difference. Right? It thought that the human generated paragraph was mostly human generated, and it came back with 99% for the AI modified paragraph. Now, I think this is too much. I think that's clearly a false positive, because it wasn't 99% human generated. Perhaps a more accurate figure is CopyLeaks' belonging to CopyLeaks result of 37.3%. It's a more realistic figure. 3 of the tools actually came back with lower figures for the AI modified text than the human generated text, which I thought was quite surprising and probably indicative of them not being very effective tools for that particular sample. So overall, I averaged all those marks, all those percentages, and gave each of the tools a mark. And it seems like CopyLeaks comes out on top with 81.21%, which that would be a distinction, wouldn't it? 2 of the tools passed, but barely, and 2 of the tools failed. So maybe if you wanted to use a different tool than Turnitin, CopyLeaks would be a good place to start. However, maybe SEO with that extra detail might be more useful. But one thing that we do know is these tools will, of course, evolve and develop as AI and large language models also evolve and develop. The tools will have more information, but so will the AI generators will have more information. So maybe it's a bit of a cat and mouse game between these things. Now, another project that I'm doing, I'm interviewing educators on their use of AI and their experience with students using AI. And a number have mentioned that perhaps Bing is a better tool in academia for AI because it produces better literature reviews, it produces better citations. So I thought I'd have a go at Bing and see whether it does actually produce results that are less detectable by AI. So I asked it to write a 500-word literature review on cultural propagation through music education. That's a topic that I'm well familiar with the literature, so hopefully I would be able to quickly assess the quality of the literature review that's being produced. Bing didn't do a very good job of citations here. It only really had one what I would call peer-reviewed or academic quality article. The first article was a document from the Department of Education, so it's a psychopolicy document. It does exist, and the reference, I'm not sure what referencing style Bing thinks it was using, because it's not a particularly good referencing style, but at least the URL worked. The second document is, again, a policy document from UNESCO. The document does exist, but that link wasn't very good. I had to actually search for the document to find it. And then that third reference there, it's very difficult to make much sense of what's going on in that particular reference. A little bit of digging and trying to find the article, I found it's actually referencing two different articles there. So I ran that essay through Turnitin and the 5 different tools, and this is what I discovered. That really only 2 of the tools came back with respectable results, content at scale and SEO, both in the 90s, convinced that this is AI generated. Turnitin, yeah, only 56%, that's a bit low I thought, and of course Writer was a very poor result there at 4%. I then did another test with Bing and I asked it to write an essay about the implications of using artificial intelligence in a Bachelor of Arts degree. And the results of this was much better. All the tools came back with either 100 or in the 90s, 99%, etc. Writer actually prompted me, you should edit your text until there's less detectable AI content. So I thought, well, maybe that's a good idea. But why should I do it? Maybe I should get ChatGPT to do it for me. So I took the essay that Bing produced, put it into ChatGPT and asked it to reword the essay so that it's less detectable by AI detection tools. And so it did. I ran that through the 6 tools and 3 of them came back very low. Writer, the one that prompted me to do this, came back with 100% human-generated content, which is obviously clearly wrong because it was 0% human-generated content, and it told me it was fantastic. The only reliable tool here was content at scale, which was 100% for both, so yes, it's perfectly accurate there. For some unknown reason, Turnitin did not give a response for this rewritten essay, so that's a bit peculiar, I thought. So what does all this mean? So some of the conclusions are coming directly from my thoughts on this particular project, but also, as I said, I've been interviewing some people about AI in higher education, in universities, both staff and students. So the conclusions that I'm coming up with here are from 2 different projects, but in general, I think it's a really good idea that educators replicate this project or something similar using their own assessment tasks. It will give them a range of really useful information about their assessments and how their assessments are resilient to AI, what kind of things students could or could not do to try and trick the system. And by going through this process, what I've discovered, the thing that I've learned doing this, is it's really familiarized myself with the red flags for AI generation. So when I see an essay that's been written by AI or partially written by AI, I can see things that make me go, oh yes, that's clearly written by ChatGPT or Grammarly or one of those tools. And yeah, that just gives me some information to think about when I'm marking the essay. A number of things that educators are doing in response to AI is in fact embracing ChatGPT as a tool, for example. And one of the things is asking the students to draft an essay using ChatGPT, or the educators will get ChatGPT to draft the essay for them and they supply that to the students. And then they get the students to fact check the ChatGPT generated essay, mark it and comment on it as if it was a submission. And that then actually becomes a formative assessment, right? So the educator assesses the student's critique of the ChatGPT draft. And then the second or the final assignment is for the students to then actually rewrite the essay and include in their appendix either like a track changes version so you can see what's happened, and possibly another idea is to also include a reflection on the process. What was good about the ChatGPT essay? What did you change? How did you go about that? Why? Those sort of reflective ideas. And another way to improve the AI resilience in this particular assignment is to make sure that the final essay and the draft have very different word counts. Some other things that educators are doing is just reducing the weight of written assignments and bumping up others, particularly like practical assignments or scenario-based assignments or oral assessments. One of my interviewees said this, just focus on the value add of what it is that human generated content can add to the basic factual stuff. So what she's talking about there was engaging with the knowledge rather than just regurgitating facts. What can you do with the knowledge? So applying it in practical sessions and using it for critique and that sort of thing. As I said earlier, scenario-based assignments, it's a little bit harder for AI to sort of trick the system with scenario-based assignments. Being really clear about the types of sources and references that are required was something that another interviewee said. And in this particular case, what she was talking about was either dictating that, like, give the students a pool of like 10 journal articles that you're allowed to cite from, or include in the submission PDFs of all the articles that have been cited. Now, another option is to reduce the frequency of written assignments and replace them with things like video submissions or narrated PowerPoints, much like what you're watching now. Some other ways of combating AI in universities is semi-open book exams or more invigilated exams. So students are allowed to, so one of the concepts here with semi-open books is that they don't bring in devices that are able to connect to the internet, but they're allowed to bring in notes or maybe even textbooks. But yeah, not anything that would help them in terms of generating AI content. The other option, of course, is just be transparent, or get the students to be transparent. Make sure that the students tell you how they've used AI, when and where, and it's perfectly fine. If industry is going to be using AI, shouldn't we be encouraging the students to use AI, but making sure they're using it properly? So that was my presentation on AI tools at the HERGA conference. I hope you enjoyed it. So yes, feel free to leave comments below and I'm happy to answer any questions.